So I have been watching a lot of Vasyl Lomachenko, Guillermo Rigondeaux video predictions. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? I know, let me address this first. There are going to be a lot of questions and concerns, as there already have been some, but let's just not worry about it, okay? I'm just going to say this much, and we are going to leave it at that. Why did I close my channel, other channel? A lot of different reasons. It's something that I've been known to do because ultimately it's really not that important. And let's just say Steve Cunningham got in touch with me and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I started feeling kind of bad for the guy, so I nixed all that and decided not to really talk about the politics of boxing. Oh, and I went on a trip to a land far, far, far and away from here anyway, probably close to some of you. And had to do some other shit. So that's that. As far as Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Vasyl Lomachenko. I've been watching a lot of video predictions, and I think most people are getting this one right. It's not a difficult fight to predict, which is not to say that Rigondeaux doesn't have a chance of winning, but we all know the deal, okay? Lomachenko is a 5-1 favorite, let's just be honest, from the get-go, which the bookies don't always get it right, don't get me wrong, just about 90% of the time. So this really is a mismatch, but that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this idea, because this is a boxing video, not a boxing channel. Get it through your head, some of you. Is this idea of the counterpuncher's reach advantage. I find it to be a pretty interesting idea. As it usually is with fanboys, no offense to anyone, you know, it is what it is. They're ideologues, and we'll talk about ideology at some point later maybe, but just to try to explain this to some of you who might have no clue what I'm talking about. Ideologues, people who follow certain ideologies, possess certain ideologies, or any ideology for that matter. What they do is they have a certain belief system, and then they try to warp reality, twist reality, make shit up, imagine stuff. Then they like to paint the world, twist reality in a way that justifies their beliefs, right? It's a certain sort of prejudice, if you will, but it's deeper than that, because people believe something and then they create ideas in their heads that may or may not be in accordance with actual fact and truth, and they explain the world like that to themselves and everyone around them, and you know, they believe that they're right, and that's fine. Ideologues. Most boxing fans are ideologues, as in the case of their favorite fighter, right? They want him to win, so no matter what logic may dictate, just quickly and logically, like just be as objective as you can, right? As far as the quality of a fight that they are, and I'm going to be a little bit generous to Rigondeaux right now, but the general perception is that they're basically, as far as pound for pound goes, they're both right there, right? They're both top level pound for pound fighters. That's what they're telling us. That's the accepted truth, right? So you have to say that's a fact. That's what people believe. It's a subjective thing, but that's what people believe. Most people out there. So they're basically just as good, right? As far as pound for pound goes. And you look at their career achievements, right? And we're gonna forget the fact that Lomachenko's record, as they tell us, is a little bit better than Rigondeaux's, but basically 2 gold medals each, Olympic gold medals, and 2 world championships between the two of them. Similar records, except Lomachenko only has 1 loss in more fights, right? And he's never lost to a Cuban in the amateurs, beat quite a few of them, and Rigo has, I don't know, 30 losses, lost to people from all over the world in the amateurs. But let's just say that they're equal, right? They're both amateurs. Their amateur careers are very much comparable, and you could argue who's better of all time, right? It's not a settled matter. They're both right there, right? Same quality level of fighter. Both of them inspire awe in so many people. We use words such as amazing, sublime, virtuoso, top of the line, creme de la creme. Top pound for pound fighters. Except one of them is significantly bigger. The fight is taking place in his weight division. He's much younger, hungrier, has been more active, looking better. This is the 5-1 favorite going in. And has the stylistic advantage to beat Guillermo Rigondeaux, right? So, looking at the fight objectively, you know who the logical winner should be. Which isn't to say that Guillermo doesn't have a chance, because upsets do happen in boxing, right? It's an unpredictable thing. But objectively speaking, Loma got this. But ideologues, people who hold certain ideologies, will warp and twist that reality to make it make sense to them, because they want Rigo to win. And watching some of these predictions, man, they're straining some of these people, man. It's really painful and heavy on their psyche, because they understand what's going to happen, but they're trying to warp reality, and they're experiencing cognitive dissonance, and they're trying to make the world make sense, because logic is telling them something that they don't like. So they start talking about reach advantage. For some people, it makes sense. It's to consider it as an advantage and how Rigondeaux can use it. But arguing for Guillermo winning, the reach advantage gets brought up a little bit, right? And fair enough. But obviously, a lot of those people in those same videos will also tell you 5 minutes prior or after what they just said about the reach that the size doesn't matter, right? Because Lomachenko is bigger and heavier, right? So they'll say that doesn't matter, and then they start talking about reach. But this is not a blatant contradiction. Size doesn't matter. Why are we talking about Guillermo Rigondeaux's reach advantage, right? It's this bias. They pick and choose an ideology to support their worldview or view of who they want to win the fight. They're convincing themselves, trying to convince themselves, right? Reality is just too fucking painful, too painful to deal with, so they reject it. But then when you start breaking it down, which, in case you haven't noticed, I already been for about 5 minutes, there's that contradiction right there. It's not making any sense, right? It's not supposed to make sense. It's rejecting logic. If the size advantage ain't important, why are we talking about Rigo's reach advantage, right? Because it is important, and they know it. And they're struggling to understand, to be honest with themselves and everybody around them. Which is not to say that Rigondeaux cannot win this fight, because he can. And that's why I'm talking about it. Because it is at least a little bit intriguing. But talking about the reach advantage and placing it within that broader picture, right? Of how it could be applied and what it really means to a counterpuncher fighting a fighter. And I hope we all know who's who. And no, we won't be debating that. Stylistically, Lomachenko is Triple G, okay? Understand that. Stylistically, he's Manny Pacquiao. He's a fighter. Guillermo Rigondeaux, he goes between a puncher and a counter-punching puncher. But if we just ignore the fact that he loads up on his shots, right? He's a puncher in style because he loads up on his shots and he makes sure to try to deliver them with the maximum power possible. Almost every single serious, real punch. That pity-patty shit, you know, it's all distraction, it's fluff, it's used to set up shots, right? When Rigondeaux does it, it's marvelous and it's sublime, even though he doesn't really seem to be doing it that much these days. When Lomachenko does it, right, it's pity-patter bullshit. He got no power, right? You see another result of this cognitive dissonance, or an example of it. So, looking at their styles, what a counterpuncher does, well, exactly what the name suggests, right? What a fighter does, he counterpunches and leads and counterpunches. He exchanges, right? That's what a fighter does. That's what Lomachenko does. He's a volume guy. He will lead and counter. Whereas, even though Guillermo Rigondeaux could be somewhat effective leading against B and C level fighters, he's not a very good or accomplished lead puncher. He can do it, but his forte is counterpunching. We all know this. And when you have this sort of style matchup, counterpunchers or fighters beat counterpunchers. Maybe I'll make another video about that. But basically, the way to look at this and throw reach advantage into it is to realize that Guillermo Rigondeaux being a counterpuncher, first and foremost, that is his base style. That is what he is best at. Being a counterpuncher, he has to let his opponent lead. He has to let him in, basically, right? Lomachenko is not going to throw any serious punches until he feels that he's in range for his shots. And from what we've seen, he understands range, he uses it well, and he's pretty sharp and accurate, just as Guillermo Rigondeaux is. Not against Drian for some reason, Francisco, but maybe I'll make a video about that. But basically, what a counterpuncher has to do is let you lead. And since Lomachenko is not going to throw any serious punches until he is in his reach, at his distance, right, given his reach, how much of an advantage does Guillermo Rigondeaux's reach really have when he has to let Lomachenko get in his range, Lomachenko's range, before he can respond? Right? Doesn't that nullify his reach advantage? I mean, obviously, he can use that jab, stick it out there and try to measure distance and control distance, but he's not going to be doing any damage with the right hand. Not from long distance. Inside or mid-range, actually, yeah, he could probably do some damage with the right hand, but long distance, he's never done it. And that's a fact. So right there, the reach advantage, how much of an advantage is it if he has to let the guy who has shorter arms get closer to him? How much of an advantage is that, really? Right? Before Rigondeaux can throw any serious punches, respond with his firepower, what's going to be happening? Lomachenko is going to be throwing first, okay, while he's in range. And then Guillermo Rigondeaux is going to be looking to, well, defend, right? You got to slip the punch and counter and hope that you stop the fighter with the counter, or what's going to happen? The counter puncher is going to go from leading to counter punching, right? It's basic sweet science, real basic sweet science that nobody seems to understand. So Guillermo Rigondeaux basically is going to be exposing himself twice before he could respond with one punch, theoretically. But when you take into account the fact that Lomachenko throws more in combination and faster combinations, Guillermo Rigondeaux is in trouble. Okay? That's why Loma is the 5-1 favorite. That's why the reach advantage that Guillermo has, I'm not saying that there aren't ways that he can use it to help him, because he can. But that's going to have his consequences too. He's not going to be able to do whatever he wants against Lomachenko. If he couldn't do whatever he wanted against Drian fucking Francisco, you think he's going to be able to do whatever the fuck he wants against Lomachenko? Jesus Christ, man. But I'm just trying to be logical and look at this as unbiasedly as possible. So, it's a mismatch, people. It's just how I feel, which isn't to say that Rigo has no chance. But it's slim. It's slim. Lomachenko is... They're basically on the same level, right? As far as pound for pound, but Lomachenko got all the advantages, right? Physical, and if Rigondeaux is just as fast, well, he's just as fast, right? Like, Rigondeaux matches Lomachenko in some areas, but is he really better in any of them? No. And, he's less versatile. He's more predictable. He runs out of ideas. He doesn't adjust very well, which is why he sucks against a somewhat technically proficient B-level fighter in Drian Francisco, who just doesn't have any fucking physical gifts or sharp tools, but has a boxing brain. Anyway. It's quite fascinating, and that's why I'm making this video. The fight itself, it has a little bit of intrigue, but it's not a great fight. It's basically a mismatch. To me, anything over 3-1 in favor of one guy that's mismatch territory, basically. 3-1. And I'm just listening to a lot of people's predictions, and it's just, this is how I feel, and there's very little logic behind it, which isn't to say that some people aren't being logical, even the emotional ones still warping reality a little bit. It's not to say that there's zero truth in what they're saying, because there are truths there, but they pick and choose which truths to push to the forefront. And that is their bias, that is their ideology, and that is where the broken heart resides, comes from, ends up.